Next witness.
Your Honor, statement called Sergeant Shore.
Sergeant Shore. Good morning, Sergeant. If you'll come right up to the front for us, please. And right up here, and if you'll raise your right hand, the clerk will administer the oath.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
All right, Sergeant, if you'll come over here and have a seat for us in the witness chair. And you can adjust that microphone, just speak directly into it so we can hear you. Ms. Wilson, go right ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Sergeant. Could you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Sergeant Brian J. Shore, spelled S-H-O-R-E, just like the beach, ID 5869.
Sergeant Shore, where do you currently work?
I work on the south side of Jacksonville in Zone 3.
Are you with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
Yes, ma'am.
And Sergeant, how long have you been with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
Coming up on 18 years in March.
How long have you been a sergeant within the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
Since 2009.
And then how long, Sergeant, have you been assigned to Zone 3?
To Zone 3 since 2000.
Could you explain to the jury what your duties entail being a sergeant within the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
Okay, I'm a patrol supervisor on the midnight shift. I've got a squad of officers working for me, so I supervise their activities, review their reports, and when they respond to serious incidents, then I respond out there and coordinate actions at the scene.
Sergeant, could you briefly explain to the jury what sort of training or coursework you had to complete prior to becoming a sergeant?
Training in ICS, which is Incident Command. Follow-on training with the Sheriff's Office. I've done training in narcotics investigations, at scene and advanced traffic crash investigation, interviews and interrogations, injury and death investigations.
Okay. Now, Sergeant Shore, I'd like to turn your attention to November 23rd of 2012. Were you working on duty that night as a patrol sergeant in Zone 3?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Now, are you the only sergeant then assigned to that zone during your shift?
For the midnight shift, there's actually two sergeants because we don't have as much overlap. We've got a period where it's just the midnight shift working. We've actually got two squads, so we've got two sergeants, two squads working under a lieutenant.
Okay. And who was the other sergeant then working with you that night?
Sergeant Phil Christie.
And Sergeant, could you tell the jury what exactly the midnight shift is, what those hours are?
We work 6:30 at night until 5:55 in the morning.
Now, during your shift, Sergeant, did you respond to a call regarding a shooting at the Gate gas station at the intersection of Southside Boulevard and Bay Meadows Road?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
What time did you receive this call?
I believe it was 7:40 p.m.
And did it come in over the radio then?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you remember where you were when you heard that call?
I was actually at the Shell station at Bay Meadows and 95 with Sergeant Christie getting coffee.
Okay. Now, once you heard that call come in over the radio, did both you and Sergeant Christie then respond to the scene?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
Did you all respond in your marked patrol cars?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you driving separate cars that night?
Yes, ma'am, we were.
And Sergeant, when you responded to the scene, did you respond with lights and sirens on?
Yes, ma'am.
What time, Sergeant Shore, did you arrive on scene?
It was probably no more than 2 or 3 minutes, but I know it was definitely less than 5 minutes because a very short distance down the road.
And Sergeant Shore, I'm showing you State's Exhibit 2. It should be up on the monitor in front of you. And is State's Exhibit 2 then an aerial of the Gate gas station that you responded to?
Yes, ma'am.
Sergeant Shore, can you explain to the jury what entrance you used to get into the gas station?
Sergeant Christie and I were both coming eastbound on Bay Meadows Road. When we reached Southside, we turned north on Southside, and we'd have actually gone into the entrance, which is to the left side of the screen here, that goes towards the strip mall with the gate station just to the right of it.
And Sergeant Shore, you can actually draw on the screen if you wanted to give a direction to help the jury out.
This entrance right here.
Okay. Now, Sergeant Shore, I'm showing you State's Exhibit 1, which is just kind of a different angle of that same entrance that you pulled into.
Yes, ma'am.
Where did you park your patrol car once you arrived on scene?
Once I arrived on scene, my patrol car was parked right in this area right here.
And then where was Sergeant Christie's patrol car parked?
His patrol car was just to the right of mine.
Okay. When you arrived on scene, were other law enforcement officers already there?
Yes, ma'am.
Approximately how many law enforcement officers were there?
At that point, best of my knowledge, about 4 or 5.
Now, do you remember whether or not Jacksonville Fire and Rescue had arrived on scene?
They had not at that time.
Did they arrive then shortly thereafter?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, Sergeant Shore, once you arrived on scene, what did you do?
Upon arriving on scene, Sergeant Christie and I both started coordinating actions there to secure the scene, find out what we had as far as any suspects that were outstanding, and also see who needed assistance at the scene as far as any medical attention.
Sergeant, could you explain to the jury how one goes about securing the scene?
Once we identify what the scene is, then we'll go ahead and first of all remove anybody that's not important to that scene and put them in a secure area. If they're witnesses, we try to keep them at the scene, and anybody that doesn't have any information that is going to be useful or doesn't need to be interviewed by the detectives, we release them. Put up crime scene tape to restrict access to the scene, and we post officers around the perimeter to make sure that access in and out is controlled.
Now, Sergeant, why is it important to secure a crime scene?
To protect any evidence at the scene. And
Where exactly did you all begin securing the crime scene in terms of establishing the perimeter?
okay, we had the entrances blocked, so all the access all around the gate station was completely restricted with patrol vehicles blocking access. And initially, we put the crime scene tape up in this area here, where we had evidence that was obviously at the scene, and then it was later expanded all the way out into this area.
And so just for the record, just to be clear, the line on the right side that you drew, that one farthest to the right in photograph, is that where the initial perimeter was established?
Yes, ma'am, in the area at the front of the store and extending out to the side here where this car is.
Would then the gas pumps in the parking lot just in front of the gas station have been included in that initial perimeter?
Yes, ma'am, it was they extended the tape across there because it was a good location for us to secure everything.
Okay. And then when was it that the perimeter was actually expanded?
Once rescue had come and they'd taken away the one injured individual for treatment, then we assessed what we had and expanded it out to make sure we had complete control of the area.
Now, when you say you shut off the entrances to the gas station, which entrances were those?
We had this entrance here blocked. We actually blocked across this entrance to restrict vehicle access. Had a vehicle here to keep vehicles from going back behind the gas station. There's another entrance over here on Bay Meadows Road on the side, and there was a police car that was there blocking that too.
And when you say you're securing the scene, does that mean then that you have officers physically putting up the police tape?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, once a crime scene is secure, who was allowed in and out of that crime scene?
At that point, the scene was secured, and there was just the supervisors and the detectives and the evidence technician.
I have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Stroh, cross?
Just 1 second of that.
Sure.
Turn my mic on, I apologize. Sergeant Shore, looking at your teleprompter there. Can you tell me who put the crime scene tape up on that first perimeter, that first long red line you have? You said that's where it started?
I couldn't give you an exact name. I know we had several officers that were working with the crime scene tape.
And when did they put that tape up?
Like I said, once fire rescue had departed,
And do you know what time they departed?
I couldn't give you the exact time. They weren't there for very long.
Okay, and then you extended it to that second line. It's a smaller vertical line, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then at one point, you have a red line over a picture of a car on States 1 right now.
Yes.
Okay, I'm assuming that car wasn't there. Was a police car there, or did you have it taped off?
That was the area right here. That was taped off. There wasn't a police car there.
Okay, and now you have kind of a dotted line going back. Was that taped off all the way to the back, to that where that alley goes through, that car?
Yes, sir. There was tape running all down that side.
Okay, and you said that car alley was now blocked by a police car.
Yes, sir, it was.
When did that car get there?
Probably within about 15 minutes of my responding to the scene.
All right, so 15 minutes after you got there?
Yes, sir.
And tell the jury when you got there.
I got there, I got the initial call at 7:40 PM, so by 7:45 at the latest, I was at the scene.
So within 20 minutes, there was now a car blocking that, and that back alley, if you could tell the jury, that actually connects from the plaza behind the gate to get out onto Bay Meadows, correct?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay. Now, at one point, you said you blocked off the entrance where these two large trees are coming off of South Side, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we'll call that the first entrance into the plaza. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
That accurate?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the jury how many entrances are in that plaza to get there?
To get into the plaza besides this entrance here,
Yes, sir.
we're talking about the strip mall section.
Yes, sir.
Okay, there's an entrance right here that you can see, and it's going to be right in here. And if you go further down to the left, there's an entrance that goes from this plaza to an office complex next door. And then from that office complex, there's an exit that goes back out onto Southside Boulevard.
Right. As a matter of fact, that one north of where you just did the little scribble on the path right there, and I know it's
Yes, sir.
hard. That one just north of it was not blocked off, correct?
That's correct.
And people had full access, unfettered, unrestricted access to get into that plaza, correct?
Yes, sir.
There were actually cars and people still in that plaza because businesses were open, fair?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Restaurants, things like that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Matter of fact, I think there's a bread company, there's pizza, there's a sandwich shop, there's something called the Loop.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So open businesses stretch all the way down that plaza.
Yes, sir.
And JSO never restricted access to that plaza, correct?
Not to the shopping center.
Okay. Was there any crime scene put up anywhere in that plaza other than your red markings that the jury sees right now?
No, sir. Everything was concentrated in the area around the gate station.
Absolutely, and I understand that. Now, can you tell this jury how many people came in and out of that plaza while you were on scene?
I couldn't say.
Can you tell the jury how many people came into that plaza before you arrived on scene?
I couldn't say.
Okay, and when did you leave the scene, if you know?
Probably sometime around midnight.
Okay, and after midnight, were people still coming and going in that plaza if there were cars there?
The plaza had pretty much shut, everything in there had shut down, but yeah, they could still come and go.
And again, from the time you got there to the time you left, and assuming, again, the businesses were open, people were coming and going. Is that fair and accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as a sergeant on scene, you pretty much control what the officers do to make sure everybody does their job, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's until a lieutenant gets there or homicide?
Yes, sir.
And Lieutenant Callahan was there?
Yes, sir.
And once Lieutenant Callahan arrived, that officer basically trumps what you want to do?
That's correct.
Okay. How long were you there when Lieutenant Callahan got there?
Probably about 20 to 30 minutes.
Okay. And after that 20 to 30 minutes, when Lieutenant Callahan got there, what other role or function did you serve at that point?
I let her know what the situation was. I'd gotten information from the hospital on the victim status, and I'd made the call through investigative to contact homicide.
Okay. And then at that point, were you done with your duties other than just observing, watching your officers?
No, sir.
What else did you do?
At one point, we had some tag information, so I followed up on some of that.
And can you tell the jury, because you actually took information you found about the license plate, correct?
One of the officers gave me information with the tag.
Okay, and that officer brought it to you because you were the sergeant?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how long were you on scene when that transpired?
Probably 15, 20 minutes.
All right, so within 20 minutes of you being on scene, you guys had information about Michael Dunn, is that correct?
We had information that who the vehicle was registered to and knew what type of vehicle it was.
And you guys ran that on David, it's a computer program you guys use to get information?
Ran it through several different checks.
Okay, and that gives you the make and model of the car?
Gives you the make, and it tells you the body style on it, whether it's a 2-door or 4-door.
Okay, it verified the license plate number?
Yes, sir.
And it matched?
Yes, sir.
The license plate number matched the description of the vehicle?
Yes, sir.
Matched the description you pulled on your computer?
Yes, sir.
You then put that out as, again, we've heard of what a bolo was. You then, 20 minutes later, put that information out there, correct?
Yes, it was broadcast out to all the officers.
Okay, and did you instruct the officers in the area to start checking the area to look for that car that matched the description you just had?
Yes, sir, I did.
And matter of fact, you guys were very specific where there was a 5 to 10 mile radius from the Gate gas station where officers were sent to look, correct?
That's where they started spreading out from.
All right.
From the Gate gas station working outwards.
5 to 10 miles, is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, that was a radius. We're not talking about a diameter. Do we understand the difference?
Yes, sir.
A radius is from, if I'm standing at the Gate gas station, it's 5 to 10 miles every
In
direction.
each direction.
Did your officers do that?
The best of my knowledge, they did.
Okay, and again, as a sergeant, you put that order out, correct?
Yes, sir.
And officers are expected to follow your orders, correct?
Yes, sir, they are.
Did you get any information that night that an officer did not follow your orders?
No, sir.
Do you have any reason to believe that your officers did not search thoroughly 5 to 10 miles radius from that gas station?
No, sir.
And they did that for several hours, isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
And nothing came back, no officer ever responded to you that they found a vehicle, correct?
No, sir.
And in fact, isn't it true that they were specifically ordered to check the hotels in the area?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you ever learned where Mr. Dunn's hotel was?
No, sir.
No officer, no homicide ever talked to you or briefed you about this?
No, sir.
After that night, were you ever called in again to help the homicide officers with this investigation?
No, sir, I wasn't.
Other than the report you filled out and what you've testified today, have you been asked to do anything else in this case?
And nothing as far as any investigation or follow-up.
Nothing further, Judge. Thank you.
Ms. Wolfson?
Just briefly, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Sergeant, once homicide becomes involved in a case, do they then complete the investigation and all the follow-up work?
Yes, sir. I already admit, yes, ma'am, sorry.
No other questions, Your Honor.
May he be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Strolla?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant. You're excused. State's next witness.
Officer Forrester?
Forrester?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Sergeant. Where's JSO? Give me JSO.
Officer, if you'll come forward to the front here and raise your right hand, the clerk will administer the oath to you.
Did I just lose my red pen?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, officer. If you'll come right around here and have a seat for us, please. Ms. Wolfson, go right ahead.
Good morning, officer. Could you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Michael C. Forster. Last name is spelled Forster.
No, Officer Forrester, where are you currently employed?
I am currently employed with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office as a bailiff in the courthouse.
How long have you been employed with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
29 and a half years,
And officer, how long have you been a bailiff then at the courthouse?
approximately a month.
Prior to becoming a bailiff, what was your job with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
I was a police officer for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office.
Were you a patrol officer?
Yes,
Officer, how long have you been a patrol officer?
29 and a half years.
Now, when you were working as a patrol officer, were you assigned to a particular zone?
Yes, I was working in the south side area, which is Zone 3.
And Officer Forrester, were you working in Zone 3 then back on November 23rd of 2012?
Yes, I was.
What shift were you working back then?
I was working Watch 6.
And Officer, what is Watch 6?
That is the evening shift and midnight shift that starts at 6:30 and it ends at 5:55 in the morning.
Officer Forrester, during your shift, did you respond to a call about a shooting at the Gate gas station at the corner of Southside Boulevard and Bay Meadows Road?
Yes, I did.
Where were you when you first heard the call?
That I don't recall.
Okay. And officer, once you heard the call come out though, did you respond directly to the scene?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember what time it was that you responded to the scene?
I believe it was 7:42 p.m.
Officer Forrester, when you responded to the scene, did you respond in a marked patrol car?
Yes.
And were your lights and sirens on?
Yes, they were.
Now, I'm showing you Officer Forrester on the screen in front of you, State's Exhibit 2. Is that on the screen to your left?
Yes, I see it.
Okay. Can you show on State's Exhibit 2 where you parked your patrol car once you arrived on scene? You could just put like an X where you parked
Okay, I parked in the southeast entrance and exit of the business.
If you put your finger on there
Oh.
with some pressure, you can put an X or a mark,
Okay,
and just drag your finger a bit, and it'll make a larger mark. It should. There you go.
Okay, so that's where then you park your car?
that's correct.
And Officer Forrester, once you park there, and is that the entrance then onto Big Meadows Road?
That's correct, yes.
Once you parked your car there, did you then help in establishing the perimeter of the scene?
Yes, I did.
And did that include putting a police tape at that particular entrance?
That's correct, yes.
Did you then control who came in and out of the crime scene at that particular entrance?
Yes, that's correct.
And just another angle, Officer, I'm showing you State's Exhibit 6. And I know in this particular photograph, you can see a JSO vehicle off to the right.
That's correct.
Was that vehicle then within inside that perimeter that you established?
Yes, that would have been on the inside of the perimeter.
Did you have any other involvement in this case other than blocking that particular entrance, holding the perimeter?
I put some crime scene tape up also.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Strolla, any questions?
Yes, Your Honor, please. Gotta make sure I'm right side up. Morning, Officer Forster, how are you?
Good morning, sir.
Congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
I'm sure it's well-deserved.
Yes,
Now, you actually were en route at 742, correct?
that's correct.
All right, and you don't recall where you were, but that is your zone.
That is my zone, correct.
And in your report, it looks like you arrived at about 7:47, about 5 minutes later?
That's correct, yeah.
Now, and every patrol car might be different, but JSO actually has laptop computers inside, correct?
That's correct.
And that goes back to dispatch who does these reports?
Yes,
And matter of fact, you don't have to do the old way of calling on the radio, talking to dispatch, and interrupting any type of radio silence. You guys can actually hit a button on the computer when you've arrived, correct?
that's correct, yeah.
So you could actually be coming onto the scene, not physically parked, but hit a button on that laptop and it says you've arrived, correct?
Yes,
And that's common practice. You don't have to be physically stopped before you hit that button, correct?
that's correct.
And that's standard procedure in your almost 30 years as a Jacksonville Sheriff's Officer?
Yes, but on priority one calls, if it's emergency, we also, when we arrive, we put it on the air if possible.
And that's okay, but I just want to make sure though that
Yes.
you can do both. You can hit a button as well.
That's correct, yeah.
And again, that's standard procedure with JSO.
Yes,
Now, when you get there, you didn't immediately put up crime scene tape, correct?
no,
Matter of fact, you had to get there and talk to, I believe, a sergeant, is that correct?
yes, that's correct.
And the sergeant asked you to put up crime scene tape.
That's correct.
Okay, where did that sergeant instruct you to put the tape up?
Close to where I parked.
Okay, and that was so you could block the entrance of Bay Meadows so cars couldn't come in and out?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Can you tell the jury how many vehicles left in the 5 minutes before you got there out of that Bay Meadows exit?
No, that I can't recall.
Okay. And were people actually there on foot walking?
And the outside of the perimeter?
Even on inside, were people at that gate, gas station, or plaza on foot without a vehicle?
Yes,
Did people walk off or try to walk off the perimeter without their vehicle?
not where I could see, no.
All right. So you just don't have knowledge of it?
That's correct.
Okay. And how long were you on scene before you were told to go put up the crime scene tape?
That I don't recall either.
Okay. So it could have been 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you just don't know?
I don't know.
Okay. And you didn't put that in your report?
That's correct, I didn't put my report.
All right. And clearly your report was done much closer in the time of 2012 than today?
Yes,
And you would agree that your memory was more fresh back then than it would be today?
that's correct.
And in fact, you noted in your report that a reserve officer put crime scene tape up on the north end of the gate entrance. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And how did you know that?
Because I had a reserve officer standing, another one standing at close proximity where I was at.
Okay. And a reserve officer is somebody who is a civilian volunteer, correct?
Yes, but they wear uniforms too.
Oh, no, absolutely. But
Yes.
they're not sworn law enforcement. They didn't go through the police academy and get hired,
That's correct.
right? They're not in I call it a FTO, or Field Training Officer. You familiar with that?
Yes,
So it's not like they're with a field training officer for purposes of being a law enforcement officer. They're just there to get experience.
no, they also go for a shorter academy, not as long as ours, and they have to have a field training officer prior to being, but prior to their training being complete.
No, right, and they have to, I mean, they're with a field training officer, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, it's all outside the scope of the direct.
Sustained.
Well, let me ask you this. In your knowledge, the only tape on the north side, and you put in your report, was the gate gas station entrance, is that correct?
Yes,
And would you agree, is it fair to say that the gate gas station is separated from the plaza?
yes,
There's actually a road that goes behind the plaza and behind the gate that separates it. So you can go from south side to Bay Meadows, correct?
that's correct, yeah.
And then in behind that, there's some businesses off on the back of the plaza. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And you're familiar with that because you've worked that zone?
That's correct.
And there are dumpsters and garbage cans and things like that for these businesses?
That I don't recall if there are any dumpsters or not.
Okay, but it's fair to say there's restaurants and other businesses there?
Yes,
And you just can't recall if there's any dumpsters back?
that's correct.
Did you do any type of search of that area?
No, I did not.
Were you ordered to do any search of that area?
No, I was not.
Did you ever hear any orders go out from any sergeants to search that area?
No,
You were just there basically for traffic control, so people couldn't come in from Bay Meadows, is that correct?
that's correct, yeah.
Thank you so much. Nothing further, Judge.
Ms. Wolfson?
No further questions, Your Honor.
May he be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Stroller?
I'm sorry, Your Honor?
May he be excused?
Oh, yes, I apologize, yes, sir.
Thank you, sir, you're excused.